started. So my name is Tim Steiner. I am an ethical hacker. I live here in Chatham County, and I work with clients throughout North Carolina and other places. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic which I'm very familiar with. I work day in day with ethical hacking and performing assessments for clients, businesses that want to see how vulnerable their environments are, so they hire me to come out and do that. So today I'm going to be giving some general tips and advice for individuals as well as businesses. I normally focus more on the business side of things. I do not have any beer with me, so next week, where I get the next talk, at the brewery, we'll have that. But I wanted to thank Bernie and Graham for giving me the opportunity to come out and speak today. This just happened to be something that I reached out to them about, and they were interested as well, and thought that it would be a good thing for the community to hear. So this is a little bit of my background. So I've been working in North Carolina for about 9 years, and before then I lived in Maryland, and I perform assessments. In a nutshell, I use offensive security tactics, the same kind of tactics that a hacker might use. And I perform those tactics in a similar way for organizations that hire me to identify weaknesses and gaps in their cybersecurity, so that I can make recommendations for them to fix those things before they actually are exploited by the bad guys. So I've been doing this for many years. I was previously a professor, and I taught ethical hacking at a university. So I enjoy sharing knowledge about this field and sharing my experiences with it, and as well as best practices for everybody to try and stay secure. So about my company a little bit, I perform vulnerability assessments, penetration tests, cloud security architecture reviews, red teams, and then I have some security products that we made as well here in Chatham County, which I will get to at the end. So to get started, I wanted to start with a quick exercise. So on the slide, I provided a QR code. And if I could get a volunteer to go ahead and scan that QR code for me, and just go ahead and, like you would any other QR code, like you're getting some information. Sorry. I'm blocking.
Here's bad news.
What happens when we scan the QR code?
Great question. I like the way you're thinking now.
Bad news.
Not my first rodeo.
All right, so has anybody scanned it? And so your phone's hacked. No. Thanks for coming. Have a great day. No, that's a little prank virus. It's a prank. It's not anything but just a website that says your phone's hacked, right? Do you believe it? You shouldn't. It says at the top it's just a joke. But just understanding that the things that we use every day, if misused, could be used for malicious purposes. Pretty much anything could be used for malicious purposes if you use it in the right way. So that's kind of what hacking is it's finding ways to use things that they're not intended to be used. The QR code here, it's used for legitimate purposes like billboards and car decals, things like that, but we could also have a link to a malicious website. Whenever you click that QR code, it actually does take you to a phishing site or something like that. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through, is that really anything can be used as a platform for hacking. So with that said, with everything all around us seemingly being dangerous, where do we even start to talk about how to stay safe in this kind of environment? So you might have questions like, is my phone secure? Can somebody access my private information, like messages or emails? Is my computer secure? Can someone access my private files, or, God forbid, turn on my webcam while my laptop's running? If I have a business, are my servers secure? Is my data in the cloud safe? And so these are some questions that can be hard to answer. A lot of them are based on context, and there's certainly ways that hackers can compromise all of those things. A common saying in the hacking community is that anything that can be hacked is just a matter of time and resources. So how hard somebody wants to try to hack something. So when you're looking at where you want to be for yourself and for your business, it's really finding a balance. The things you do that are more secure are going to be less convenient. Things you do that are more convenient are going to be less secure generally. So you're probably never going to get to a point where you're the highest level of security because your convenience level would be so low, you're not going to want to do that. So you can see that there's a graph there. It basically shows there's a sweet spot there. So if you find a good balance between security and convenience, that's where you want to be. And it's not really a one-size-fits-all approach. It's different for every person or business. So whenever you're looking at something that is increasing an individual security, you're talking about less convenience. When you're talking about a business, that usually translates to more expense, because things like if I'm requiring all of my employees to use this really secure process to log in, okay, now it takes them all a really long time to log in, now I'm paying them to be secure, and that's taking time, that's taking money away from other businesses, processes that we could be doing. So keep that in mind, and then really individuals are only going to accept a certain level of inconvenience. And if they are given too much inconvenience, they might find other ways around it. Like if you make password policies require changing too often, we found that people just write their passwords down on a sticky note and put it under the keyboard or something like that. So, adding too much inconvenience can sometimes backfire. So finding that balance is the key. There's a lot of things that we might feel are insecure. And it's similar to the way I compare it is to if you were riding an airplane or an automobile. Which one is safer? Typically, it's by the data. You're safer in an airplane than you are driving in your automobile. However, it doesn't feel that way for a lot of people. Whenever you get into a plane, you have that sense of danger more than you would in your car. But when we look at the data, it's actually safer to ride in an airplane. So there's some other things. So let's say your friend tells you to never connect to free Wi-Fi at a coffee shop. Okay, well, or anywhere. And so here we have free Wi-Fi. I just saw the password written down when it came in. So that's a general rule that is kind of misunderstood. Yes, if you want it to be ultimate level of security, you should never connect to any free Wi-Fi. However, in the real world we live in, you're probably going to need to connect to free Wi-Fi now and then. So those are some things where it's really just a matter of choosing the right choices, making the choices that you're choosing to be inconvenient, to be data-driven, and to actually have the most impact on your personal security and on your business security. So not really listening to your emotions so much as just following what the data says, following how people are generally compromised. So here I'm getting into some more of the complicated things. So in my industry and what I do, we simulate what a malicious hacker might do for a business. So then they can say, all right, we have these security controls in place to prevent that. And how well are these security controls working? How are they not? So this is more for a business focus. It gets a bit technical, but essentially what this is, the MITRE ATT&CK framework is this framework where they have collected every single type of attack that they find that hackers are using out there. And so they put this into the MITRE ATT&CK framework. And so they give them a certain designation, a certain number, and we can actually see from the data which one of these tactics are used most often or least often. And so by looking at that, you can actually prioritize for a business. Where do you want to focus your money and your efforts on trying to prevent being hacked? And so you want to put your money where the most prevalent hacks are. And so the top three are these three described here. So we have command encrypting interpreter, credential dumping, data encrypted for impact. So these are complicated terms. I'm just going to briefly mention essentially what it is somebody is breaking into the computer, they're running certain scripting commands, they're trying to get passwords out to access other systems, and then data encryption is what you've heard of as called ransomware. So ransomware is essentially someone breaks into a business, they want to encrypt all the data in all of the computers, and then say, hey, pay me $1 million to get the key to unlock everything. If you don't, you lose it forever. So this has happened to a lot of local counties, local governments. So I've assisted in some of the responses to some of those. And this is a very common thing. And so if you're looking to implement a data-driven security, you would want to target these top 3. So this image here just this demonstrates the common flow of an attack. So if we're looking at, from the beginning, an attacker might start harvesting email addresses. They might look to find a way to weaponize that to deliver a payload, which would be maybe a phishing email, or maybe put it on a USB drive that someone just picks up and plugs in and starts running the programs on it. That goes to exploitation, which now they're inside the computer. Now they can install malware, now they command and control. And now they have essentially, just as if they're sitting in front of your computer, they can do anything that you could do at that point. So that's why they're able to dump your credentials, do things like key logging. So key logging would be where somebody is running a program that's actually capturing every single key you press. So then when you're going to your website to log in and you're entering your password, those things are all captured. Then the attacker can steal that credential and log in on their computer. So there's some things we can do to prevent various stages of this, though.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Are they predominantly, though, or 100% business, or do they do personal home computers too, those 3?
It's mostly business that the hacking groups that have the capability to do this are more focused on businesses. The hackers that are focused on individuals are a lot more lower tech. They're just looking to compromise one person, get thousands of dollars, whereas the more organized criminal organizations are going after organizations where they get millions of dollars. If that answers your question. So when we're looking to develop defenses to these common types of attacks, we have to look at, for an organization, for a business, what are the crown jewels of that business? And for an individual, you're looking at what is my most important data. So you're understanding what you're trying to protect first. Because you don't want to use an extreme level of protection for something that's not very important. And you don't want to use a low level of protection for something that is very important. So you really have to define that first. Then you're going to want to look at, for a business, the same data may in different scenarios have different things that we want to protect. So, for example, if we have an accounting firm, the confidentiality of a client's data would be very important. They wouldn't want their client's data to be stolen out of the organization. So that we call confidentiality. For a bank, the integrity of data may be more important. Maybe the confidentiality is important, but if you can change the integrity of data, say add a couple of zeros to your account balance on the bank ledger, or remove a couple of zeros, that's a big deal. So the integrity of the data there might be really important. For a hosting company that's saying hosting all these websites, availability might be important. They don't want their websites to go down. If, say, Amazon.com went down for an hour, how much money would they lose? Billions. We're talking a lot of money there. So understanding that there's different things that define what is more important for different types of data. There's some other factors. I'll just go through these quickly. This is something that would be more for a security architect, would be looking to implement things like defense in depth. We don't just want to have one level of protection if the hacker gets past that they're in, right? We want to have defense in depth. So there's a couple layers to a good security defense. So in the event that one fails, you have another layer. And then zero trust is essentially we're looking to make sure that if one part of something's compromised, it can't be used to access everything else. So something should not be able to be compromised that is trusted by everything else within a computing environment. And so then it's that one single source of failure. Once they get into that, it's game over. So those are some concepts to consider when developing defenses. So there's a really important role that cybersecurity testing plays in for businesses to identify these gaps before they're actually exploited by hackers. You know, a business may think cybersecurity is not that important and may not prioritize it over other things until the actual breach occurs and they realize, hey, this is really bad. But by doing cybersecurity testing, you can identify those gaps before the business is actually compromised, and you can fix those things before they actually turn into a breach. So there's some common things that you might find in a penetration test. So let's say that the client thinks, hey, everything in our environment's super secure, everything's patched. Okay, well then we find out, oh, but wait, there's like one third-party vendor system that wasn't patched. That leaves a big hole that can grow into a large hole if an attacker gets on that one system and uses it to compromise everything else. So that's something you could find in cybersecurity testing. You could find that multi-factor authentication was enabled for all users except maybe one. There was a contractor that wasn't. That one user being compromised allows getting into a system that then is used to compromise other systems. So it's kind of a chain that an attacker would use, and any weak link in the chain is something that an attacker is going to exploit to attempt to breach the entire environment. So this brings me to the slide, and I think this is probably going to be the most value for this audience is, you know, I think most of you are individuals more rather than business owners. Is that pretty much the case? Okay.
Business owner here.
Okay, business owner here, great. So I have some information next for businesses, but this is the best practices for individuals. So what are the top things you can do to protect yourself? So number one, adding a second factor. So if you've ever tried to log in and it says, hey, you know, you have to have the SMS code sent to your phone to log in as well, that's good. That's one way of doing MFA. It's not the best way, and we'll go into why. There's some other better ways. So there's some other apps you can download, such as Authy or Google Authenticator, and this is going to work well for most users. It's much better than SMS-based code that's generated and sent to your phone because it's actually generated on your phone. And then number two is using a software password manager. So rather than having maybe a book of passwords, that's something that you know, you could do a digital version of that, which is a password manager. And password manager manages all your passwords and it allows you to have secure passwords that are longer. You could even have random passwords. Ideally, that's what you want. And so you don't actually have to remember any of the passwords. You just have to remember the one master password for your software password manager. And you have to have your multi-factor code to log into it. So you only have to log into that one thing. And that one thing then stores all of your passwords for your various sites.
So it's a pretty bad idea to have one password to use for all your accounts?
Yes, so this is different than sharing a password among all of your accounts, because the only thing that this password is used for is to unlock your password manager, which then has access to all of these random passwords that are used for all your sites. So So here we're saying that you need to have a very good master password for a software password manager. Because like you said, it does store all of your information. It's like your notepad with all of your passwords. So you want to have a very good master password and always use that MFA, always use that Authy or Google Authenticator app to make sure that that has that second level protection. So even if somebody compromises the password, they can't get in. They have to have that particular app's MFA to get in.
What do you think about a system like Norton that has a password manager as part of it?
Those are good. I would say that, I think, in my opinion, they're over-marketed. So they're basically marketing it towards, you got to be careful when something's over-marketed like that. It's just, it's promising a lot more than I think it's actually delivering, and you can get the same thing from a free solution like Bitwarden. So Bitwarden is the password manager I would recommend for most users. Bitwarden, so it's BITWARDEN.
D-I-T-W.
W-A-R-D-E-N. So if you want to take a picture of this particular slide, this would be probably the most relevant for this presentation to actually look at these products.
I got a question. I use Bitwarden, and it says up there, make sure you have a backup. What exactly do you mean?
So let's say that you have a really secure master password and you forget it. So you have no way to get back into your Bitwarden account. You've just lost all of your passwords to all of your accounts, right? Because you can't get into your Bitwarden where all of your, it's like if your notepad where all of your passwords were was destroyed, now you got to go reset every password and hopefully you can get back into all of your accounts. So you can do a backup of a password manager where you have like a backup security key that you actually print off, and it's like some words or some characters, and you print it off and store it in the safe somewhere so that way in the event that you get locked out, you have a way to get back in.
What happens if Bitwarden goes out of business?
So that would be something to consider. You can also download a full backup of Bitwarden to your computer. So it's always stored on all of your devices. So let's say they go out of business. Okay, well you still have it on your laptop, you still have it on your phone. And most likely they're going to go through some sort of transitionary period where they're saying, hey, we're going out of business in 6 months. You have 6 months to switch over, and it'll warn you every time you go in, hey, your passwords need to go to something else, we're going out of business. So I've never seen one actually just go out of business and say, see you later, good luck. Yes.
Could you talk about the pros and cons of online and offline password managers?
Sure.
I would worry about the online password manager and being in the middle of the two.
Yeah, and I think anybody who's looking for that, you know, you don't mind the extra little inconvenience. You want higher security because it is more inconvenient to do an offline password manager. You should definitely, if you're looking to have the highest level of security, do an offline password manager. And so what this means is that you can't just access it from any device. You can't just go on your phone and access it and that you've never used before. It's stored locally on a computer. And so all of your passwords are stored locally offline. It's not stored in the cloud. It's not stored on somebody else's servers. So you do have more control over that data and less likely for it to be compromised. Because let's say Bitwarden's not doing something correctly, and then their systems get hacked, and it's all in the cloud, and so now that information is compromised. I think they're doing a lot of things to prevent that, but it's always possible that somebody can compromise something in the cloud. And so having it offline really gives you that extra level of protection. However, there's some trade-offs, because if it's only offline on one computer and that computer gets thrown in the trash, now all your passwords are gone. So if you're doing offline, you're probably going to want to install it on several systems that are able to sync between the systems so that you can have your passwords in the event you lose the device, you don't lose all your passwords.
What would your backup, if you did regular backups, would it catch the online?
Yeah, as long as that's included in the backup, it's going to be like a little database file that would need to be included in that. If it's stored on your desktop or documents, it's going to be included in the backup for that.
But you'd want an external, you'd want it off that computer, but you'd want an external backup.
Yeah. So if you're really looking to have a way to, like, let's say your house caught on fire and all your devices burned in the fire. Okay, well now it's not in the cloud and all your devices are gone, so you lost it. So you'd really want to have a backup in, say, a fire safe or maybe at a different location so that you always have the backup. Or you could store it in like a secure file using something like Veracrypt. So Veracrypt's a way you can do encrypted files, and then you could store that in the cloud. Because you have an extra level of security and encryption. So a lot of these other solutions at the bottom are just things that I personally would recommend. Signal Messenger, if you're doing secure messaging, I think is a good one. Bitwarden Send is a free way to send files. It's kind of like Send File, where you wanted to send a file to somebody, but you don't want to email it. You want to make sure it's encrypted when you send it. Brave Browser for if you're looking to ensure that you're using a private browser rather than Chrome, which is allowing cookies and things like that to track you. Brave blocks a lot of that, so it provides a lot of the same usability, but adds an extra layer of privacy. Tails is something, if you were interested in browsing Tor or anything like that, that's a secure way to do that. Proton Mail is an encrypted email provider, and so they do have a free email solution that's pretty good. They do make it so you have to pay to have a lot of the advanced features. Proton VPN is free, free VPN, DuckDuckGo, so for searching, let's say you don't want to use Google search because maybe it's tracking you, things like that, so you can use DuckDuckGo, which is better. And there's actually something that's cut off there called Cryptomator, and Cryptomator is a way to encrypt all of your files in the cloud. Like inside of Google Drive, you can encrypt everything. So that's another good solution to try.
How do you, what's the end of it? Crypto, what is it?
Cryptomator, so it's M-A-T-E-R.
I will also put these files up on the Innovate channel in the next couple days.
Oh,
Great.
I have a question.
Sure.
This is kind of dismal, but, all of these passwords, if something were to happen to the two of us, should we have a written list of passwords? As someone looking for information, family person who needs information could get in them? Should all be printed out?
I would say no, but you would want, and so I've done this, is like, you write a will, and so in there you might want to have instructions specifically how to access all of your accounts. So if they're all stored on your laptop, in Bitwarden, you would have, here's the Bitwarden recovery key way of accessing it, and test it out, make sure it works. Follow the instructions you wrote, make sure you can access all of your accounts, and then have that with your will or other instructions, and make sure that they can access it digitally. You could have it printed all out. The reason I would say not to do that is just because that would be very inconvenient. Every time you have a new account, you got to add it to your password manager, then you got to go write it down in your personal area of your storage. That seems like an extra layer of work that you probably wouldn't need.
Relevant to this question, are there any other commercial entities that provide services the way Apple does for their Apple ID recovery? I happened to see someone in the Apple store recently. They were talking about you can designate a person who can access your account, but they have to walk in with your death certificate to access that. So they need that two-factor authentication. They need the designation from Apple that says that you can get their Apple ID to log in and get on access your cloud. But then you also have to have their death certificate. Are there any other companies that provide similar services?
There are some options in the paid versions of password managers. I believe LastPass has this, where you can designate somebody else to have access to your passwords. The problem with, and so the reason why most of these other solutions don't have the ability to do that is if Bitwarden, say, has the ability in the event of your death to access all your passwords, well, that means they can already access all your passwords. And so why would I want to trust them to do that, right? So the whole idea with these services is they can't access them. They are set up in a way to where everything's encrypted, and so it's encrypted with your master password, and so that's the only way to access it is that. So if that's lost, they can't recover that data for you. So that's why it's very important to make sure you have a backup if you're putting all of your passwords in that one place.
Go to the Israelis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the password manager, and it has a password, one password,
Right.
and you add, this is my password manager, this is my password, and you put that inside your will, then if your child or whoever gets it, they could just go right into your device and do what you were doing before you passed.
Yeah, exactly. And so there would be an extra step there, and that kind of brings me to the next part is you want that multi-factor on your master password as well. So you have to have your master password, then you have to have your multi-factor token. So you can back up both of those with your will. So you could say, here's my master password, and here's the QR code for the Authy or Google Authenticator or whatever method of multi-factor you're using there. If they have your phone and instead of an SMS, they could always just receive a text message. So they may not need it in that case.
And don't forget to give them the password to your computer or your phone, will you?
Yes, yeah, so test it out. Make sure you write down the instructions and actually run through it and make sure it works. So I wanted to talk a little bit because MFA is the #1 thing you can do. And so MFA, I say that's multi-factor authentication. It's also called second factor authentication, or sometimes adding there's a couple of different ways they phrase it, but that second factor means I have to have password plus something else. And so it's usually something you have, or something you are, or something you know. And so something you have would be, you have your phone, and so you could receive an SMS text message on there. Something you have would be Google Authenticator, Authy. They have these tokens that essentially are generating a 6-digit code that's only valid for a short period of time. And something you have would also be a push-out notification. And then the best way is a physical security key. So we'll get into that a little bit, but this is actually a physical key that you have to plug into your computer to access your account. So that's the best way, and we'll go into why and some of the risks of the other approaches. So SMS-based MFA is good, definitely better than nothing at all. So essentially you're getting a text message to your phone, and then you have to enter that to log into whatever service. There's some risks there. You could leave your phone unlocked and somebody else could receive that text message. Somebody could physically remove the SIM card from your phone. If, say, you're at a restaurant and they pop out the SIM and then walk away with it, that's an option. You could also be a victim of a SIM swapping attack. This is pretty unlikely to occur, but it does occur sometimes. For example, if somebody has a lot of cryptocurrency and there's like $1 million on the line, the SIM swapping is definitely a possibility.
Well, SIM swapping or SIM stealing, once they put it in another device, what do they still need? Your face, your fingerprint, or something to access that information on the SIM? Like, just because we put my SIM in your phone, if I have, a passcode and all that online, like, I don't think you could just get it in my SIM card, right?
So if we just had, say, your SIM, and we popped it out and put it into a brand new phone, and then it's going to register with the network as being your number, then I could receive text messages without any password or any fingerprint or anything. The SIM card is just purely a way to identify you to the cellular carrier that you're that number. So you can still receive somebody's text messages without any other information if you steal that SIM.
I had a call from a hacker who had the phone number of the bank, and that was the phone number that showed on my phone. And he was saying he was a security person from the bank.
Yes.
And when I questioned him, how do I know who you are? He said, well, look at the number I called you on. That's the number of Truist Bank, which is where I deal. If somebody can get somebody else's number, can security message go to that number?
That's what they did there is spoofing. They spoofed their source number, their source phone number. And so a good general way to deal with that, if you're in any way questioning them, is say, hey, it's fine, I'll call you back. I'll call the direct number for Truist,
Good.
So I don't need to talk to you anymore. And so a lot of times, even if a bank calls me and they said, hey, it's Citibank or whatever, I'm like, and they're like, is this so-and-so? I'm like, well, I don't really need to tell you over the phone. If it's an important thing, I'm hoping I'll receive a notification in another way. And I'm not going to have a conversation with somebody on the phone usually where I give up any information because it's hard to say who they are. It's better for you to call them. But no, they can't receive a text message in that case.
For that number.
Right.
I had a call last week from a spam caller, from saying they were with American Express. They said, just call the number on the back of the card
So you said they told you to call the number on the back of your card? So that would go to the company. So it must have been a legitimate call if they're telling you to call the official number for the bank. That's going to go to the bank. There's not a way for them to, or I won't say there's not any way, but there's not an easy way for them to compromise the bank's phone system and have you call the bank and then that's actually going to the bank. I mean, it's possible, but like they would have to get into the bank's phone system and hack into the bank.
I have a small business and I get a lot of emails that are unsolicited for buying this or buying that. And I've had now to check where the email came from. Because the emails that these want to sell you something, they'll show you Ace Hardware, this product, and you can get it for this price, and click here and it takes you wherever you want. If you don't look at that email address, you see that it's out of country and it's some alphanumeric soup of nonsense as the email @.com and but from France or Canada or Timbuktu.
Right.
So you really have to watch. And I made the mistake the first time because, I want that product. And I didn't look quickly. I was in a hurry. Didn't look at that email. So that's what's bugging me now. I'm getting all of these junk emails that I'm afraid I do not trust at all. I'm going to go buy it at retail or I'll buy it at their discount.
Yeah, that's.
a big deal.
So we're actually going to get to a slide where I'm going to go over a sample phishing email that will have the top things to look for in the email. So that's a great point. Phishing is the most popular way and the most common way of attackers getting into individual systems. So we'll talk about what you can do to protect yourself there. So the method I recommended is Google Authenticator, Authy, Microsoft Authenticator. So these apps have this 6-digit code that changes every 30 seconds or so. And unlike an SMS message, it's not sent to your phone. It's generated on your phone. So if somebody steals your SIM card, it doesn't matter. You can still be phished in this instance. Like let's say you've got an email that says, hey, log into your bank, and you go there and you log in, and then it says, hey, enter your token, and it's a fake website. It's still going to let you enter the token into the fake website. It's changing every 30 seconds, so hopefully it would expire before the attacker can use it, but it's still in some cases possible to compromise this approach through phishing. Or say your phone's stolen and it's unlocked and your app's unlocked and it's generating these codes, and somebody would obviously be able to get that. So this is the better approach. Push apps, so you may have seen these like Duo and other providers that they basically say, are you trying to log in? Say yes or no. These are good. These have benefits over SMS and TOTP in some ways. There's still ways you can compromise this. Let's say you accidentally click approve, or maybe you didn't really know if you logged in and you clicked approve. That's going to let them in, that guy, into your system. That's basically the final part of logging in. So you got to be careful with that. Make sure to look at the login and make sure it's actually you trying to log in. It has the location a lot of times and where they're coming from on there. So if you don't know for sure, make sure to deny that. So these are security keys. These are what are considered the best approach to multi-factor authentication. These are not the most convenient because you have to physically carry it with you. You have to physically plug it into the computer or scan it or tap it to a phone. So these are very secure, not so convenient. And something to consider with security key is if you're prone to losing things, or you definitely want to have a backup key. Have two of these so that in the event you lose one, you have a backup. So now we're at the phishing email. So this is a common phishing example. So there's some things to take notice of in the email. So number one, we have a spelling mistake. That's an indicator that it's from a non-legitimate source. we have an incorrect email, so it's saying Microsoft.co instead of Microsoft.com. You know, that little extra detail in there, it's actually a completely different website, Microsoft.co, than Microsoft.com. So you have to look at the website and make sure it's the website you're expecting it to come from. You have an attention grabber, so I said suspicious activity. You have a sense of urgency, you know, they want you to do it now, so that's unusual. And then the malicious link itself is usually just some text, and you don't actually see where it's going unless you hover your mouse over it, and then you would see where that actual link is going. So based on this phishing email, I have 3 general rules to consider. Just never click a link in an email. Most security conscious companies will tell you to go to the website to log in now. You know, your bank will say, hey, we never tell you to click a link in an email. So that's the general rule. Then we get to, okay, well, sometimes I'm going to have to click a link. Okay. So if there's an important link that you must access, instead of clicking, you can hover over the link, you can copy it. It's usually like a right click to copy that link, and then you can paste it into a site like virustotal.com. And that'll tell you if this has been identified as a malicious link by anybody else anywhere else. And so if it
Where do you
has,
send it? Where do you take it?
virustotal.com is one of the sites that I use. Virustotal.com. And so this is another site where you can actually upload files to see if they're malicious. You can upload, you know, like let's say you have a document that somebody sent you, you can upload it there and see if it's malicious. You'll see it. And
VirusTotal's free.
yes, well, they do have a pay version, but for general purposes, yes. And then let's say everything comes back clean on VirusTotal. So if you want to be extra careful, you can open a private tab in your browser and then paste the link in and then go to the website through the private tab. So that the private tab will make sure it's not getting any of your personal information like your cookies or where you've been or who you are, your location, and everything. And then the general rule number 3, never open an email attachment unless you're very sure of the sender of that file, because, you know, like we identified, phishing is the most popular way for an attacker to get into your computer. And so if you open a malicious file on your computer from an email, it could be game over. So that's very important to not do that. Sometimes, again, you're going to have to do it, you know, maybe a law firm sends you a PDF or something. PDFs are pretty safe most of the time. Make sure you look at file type. If it's PDF, you know, that's pretty safe. If it's an EXE or some unknown file type, that's not something you should open. And if it's like a Word document or Excel, those are somewhat risky. Be careful with those, because you can have macro-enabled documents.
I was going to mention something that some people might not know. So when you look at the URL for these things, where the browser's going to go, it's real easy to look at the first word that might say Microsoft or Truist Bank, but you have to keep going to look right before whatever .com.org is, because that's where it's really going. So I've gotten almost tricked a few times when it'd be like, like Microsoft dot, and then, hackercity.com or something like that, but I just look at Microsoft. So, and the other thing I was going to mention, I'm happy that you were able to figure out where the email came from, but they can spoof that too pretty well. So you have to really dig deep to figure out where that email actually originated from, and it's not very easy.
And you can't always see it on your phone. Like I got one from DocuSign today, and it looks, there's nothing weird about, I'm not expecting an email from the Screw Center.
Right.
But it doesn't, it's not misspelled, it's not out of the country or anything. But then it does tell me that, to click this, review the document, and money will be put in my account this afternoon, for one, I don't want to click your document. But it looks legit. Like it looks like, it'd be easy for anybody to want to just click that to see, what money I'm getting.
Right. So like Tim said, it's better if you can get any of these companies to do it through their site. Like when I talk to the bank, I use the secure thing in the bank's website to send emails to them and ask them questions. And they get those much more easily than if I sent them just a regular email.
But do you take a document like this email and put it in that sandbox that you're talking about through,
You could take the link or the attachment file and put it through VirusTotal. You couldn't put the email itself.
which means you're gonna click on it then. You actually
You have to, you could hover over the link and copy the link, and you can download the file but not open it, and then upload it to VirusTotal. That would be one way to do it. Ideally, again, never opening it unless you have to. And I would say if you're going to open it, it's better to open it on your phone than it would be on a computer. There's a lot more risks on a computer.
Why is that?
So phones only allow trusted apps. So if you have an iPhone, it only allows apps from the Apple Store. If you have a computer, it'll allow an app from anywhere. So you could have a file just made by some random person and they send it to you. But your phone isn't going to run a file from a random person in most cases. There are some exceptions, but it's a lot harder to compromise a phone than it is to compromise a laptop or Windows system, typically. So I have a checklist here for organizations. This is a little bit more technical, but for organizations, you should always have MFA for all critical accounts. This includes Windows domain accounts, VPN, Office 365, and then there's some next generation EDR, XDR products coming out that actually work really well. With AI-powered tools like CrowdStrike and SentinelOne, they provide better protection than your traditional antivirus. They're able to detect things that are unknown threats and advanced persistent threat type of compromises. So for organizations, it's very critical to have good backups because we mentioned ransomware. And ransomware, encrypting all of your files, if you don't have a good backup, can be a terrible thing. It could cause a business to go out of business in some cases. If all of your critical data that all of your business requires to run is gone, and you can't get it back, that would be the game over for some businesses. There should be some controls to prevent using weak or dictionary-based passwords. So, let's say you just use a default setting, which means you need to have an uppercase, a lowercase, a number, a special character. But that means that something like summer 2023 exclamation mark would be a valid password. And that's not good enough for a Windows environment because there's some ways you can try to crack these passwords. And so if it's dictionary-based, then it's easier to crack. And so a password like that could be cracked in a matter of minutes.
What's your opinion on phrase-based passwords?
I think phrases are great, as long as you have a long, right, like 20
We check the first
character
letter of
plus.
each word of the phrase.
Right. Yeah, passphrases are good. And then also implementing a cybersecurity testing program. So you want to regularly conduct assessments to help you find those gaps before the backup is due. Doing web application penetration testing on all new web applications before you deploy it to the internet. You don't want to put an application you developed in-house out on the internet without making sure it's secure first. So I wanted to talk a little bit, since we talked about the 502 security keys, physical security keys being the top solution, the most secure. Not necessarily the most convenient, but the most secure. I want to talk about a product that my company made, and so this is called OnlyKey. So OnlyKey is like a multi-function security key. So I carry one around with me. I use it personally as well as many other users out there. So it provides you a way to store your passwords. You can store up to 24 passwords on it. So you can store your password for your Bitwarden and your master passphrase on there. Like you could store that really long secure password and not have to remember it. And so you have this physical security key that will do that for you. And so one of the reasons we made this is that just really from doing the consulting over the years and just seeing that, hey, there's really a need for something else out there in the community that will provide that extra level of security for things where you really need it to be secure. And so that's what we did with OnlyKey. So this was developed in Chatham County. We got a patent, and then we are selling this all over the world.
Excuse me, are those push buttons on the USB? I mean, to,
Yes, it's not really a push button, it's a capacitive touch button. So it's kind of like your touch screen on your phone.
but to enter a PIN code to unlock the,
Right, yes. So that's a key point. So if you see those 6 buttons on there, there's 2 functions really. First one is it requires a PIN code to unlock it. So just like, you go to the ATM, you have to have a PIN. So it has 6 buttons, so your PIN could be, you just type in 1 3 6 5 4 1, and then it unlocks. And so then at that point you can use the device. But without that PIN, if you were to lose the device, it's unusable. So that's one of the things, the key features of this device is that you have that physical security. If it falls off your keychain, if you lose it somewhere, you don't have to worry about it.
But otherwise, it would like the other one that was the pictures, the physical keys?
Yes, it works the same way as those, it just has that extra. So those, if you lose them, they can be used by somebody. But it's only the second factor. This one, if you lose it, it can't be used because it has that extra PIN code required. And then once you unlock it, you can use it just like another security key. We have a couple of other models. There's a smaller model that we made to fit into phones, and it also provides USB-C or USB-A, so you can plug it into either type of device. So we launched that a couple years ago.
Oh, you got one for dogs?
Unlock your dog's collar.
Oh, it says FIDO certified.
Oh yeah, FIDO. So that's the, I don't know exactly what it stands for, but it's essentially the Authentication Alliance.
say you get mount, you've got no protection.